Welcome to the city's first fully virtual council meeting. We have 7 members of council participating at home, as well as we have a number of staff participating at home. And representing council here tonight, I've got Councillor Sapola and myself. And we have our CAO, our deputy clerk, and our assistant clerk. So thanks and welcome to all. I would like to start to remind everybody we got some protocols in place. I think you've got a copy of them already, but that were sent by Ms. Williams regarding electronic participation in the protests. So hopefully not a protest yet, but a process at this point for tonight's meetings. So as you all have right now, please leave your microphones muted and leave your webcam on. Motions will appear on your screens, and I'll be asking for a mover and a seconder to introduce the motions. If you'd like to move or second a motion, just like you would in the council chambers, just throw your hand up, and I'll recognize a mover and a seconder. Then we'll read the motion and put it on the floor. Also, please indicate if you wish to speak by raising your hand. This will allow me just to identify to put you in queue as I normally would, and. It'll put you in the speakers list. In order to maintain accountability and transparency to the public, the chat feature should only be used to indicate your desire to speak to an item. But again, you should be able to just raise your hand and do so. Voting will be conducted by a show of hands. So you're getting the impression that tonight's meeting will have a lot to do with your hands, or at least one of them. If you vote by showing a show of hands. If you can't see your vote, then I will ask you to verbally declare your vote. But hopefully that won't be an issue. Verbal declarations are not considered a recorded vote, and they're not recorded in the minutes as such. Recorded votes will only be made if requested by a member of council in keeping with our normal procedure. Every effort will be made to keep the motion displayed on the screen during the discussion and voting. However, it may be necessary to switch screens. This enables me to see members who wish to speak and call the vote. If I can't see everybody, we'll just display it at the beginning and display it after we've had adequate discussion. But if somebody requests that it goes back up, we can certainly do that at that time. And members of the city's senior leadership team are not visible, but are connected and available to answer your questions. Ms. Williams, thank you very much for helping to orchestrating putting together those protocols for tonight's meeting. That's very helpful. As will happen, I'll get bumped into my system here. Okay. Anyway, I will call the meeting. So I have called the meeting to order. Is somebody on the screen or in the chamber willing to move the agenda before us? One change, though. Sorry. First, thank you. Because of the government's recent ruling, I believe Friday or Saturday, as to construction jobs that are deemed essential and non-essential, and we have a list of both within the city. The Aqua Theater has been deemed non-essential since the agenda was put out for this meeting. So the staff have asked that it be withdrawn. So I would ask for a motion to capture the agenda unfortunately, with the Aqua Theater being pulled at the moment. Moved by Dave, seconded by Mason. All in favor? Thank you. First vote, good job. Are there any disclosures of interest? We have minutes for approval from February 24th Council Committee. Is there a mover and a seconder for those February 24th minutes? Moved by Dave, seconded by Rob. All in favor? Tim, you don't have to be. No, I guess if you don't vote, it'll be a no vote. That's okay. Okay. There are no closed sessions for tonight, so we have a consent agenda. I know members of council know how this works. There are 3 items, sorry. And just as a reminder for those at home, the consent agenda is a number of items that we will capture together in one motion. Unless a member wishes to pull one for a change of direction, they are certainly free to speak to any of the motions and offer up the option of trying to change one of the motions and captured in the consent agenda. So, Ms. Williams, would you, or sort of Ms. Cadeau, would you put the consent agenda motion on the floor? Is anybody, are we aware of any being pulled for change of direction or discussion?
Mayor Clark, I'm not aware of any members pulling an item for change in direction or wishing to speak to an item.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cadeau has put the motion on the screen before us. Is there, you can see it on your screen. Is there I'm going to ask her now to remove it, or I can maybe do that perhaps, I don't know. So I can see members of council. Is there a mover and a seconder? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Cipolla, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Any discussion on the consent agenda items? I'll call the question. All in favor? That the recommendation set out on April 6, 2020 consent agenda be adopted by council committee and forwarded to council for ratification. Very sorry, gang, still getting used to this new system. I will now call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Nothing under board reports this evening. We do have council referrals. First one up with respect to parking between, I think it's parking lot 6, if I'm not mistaken, and for the students that take the educational course on the other half of the building that city council that's in but doesn't occupy. And there is a motion that will ask to be put on the screen right now. There it is. Is there a mover and a seconder? Moved by Mason, seconded by Ralph. Sorry, moved by Councillor Ainsworth, seconded by Councillor Cipolla. That this committee recommends to council that report number DSC 2005 dated March 10th, 2020 from the Development Services and Engineering Department regarding a request from Lakehead University for free student parking in municipal parking lot 6 be received as information. I will now entertain discussion on this motion, but I will ask that we remove the motion from the screen. Thank you, Councillor Ainsworth.
Yes, through you, Mayor Clark. Unfortunately, I think the timing of this motion is a little uncanny, as classes have been canceled and such. But I think in the future, if they do want to move forward in this direction, something to be happy to discuss at that point in time. But obviously, as we know, with universities and colleges in class canceled, this won't really have any effect if we do receive this information anyways.
Thank you for that. Why do I feel like I want to go casual tonight? But anyway, I'll try to keep it somewhat formal. Thank you, Councillor Ainsworth. Councillor Iman.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Through you to staff, do the downtown campus students using lot 6, because I can't recall, are they paying the city a fee for that purpose?
Yeah, through you.
Sorry, I will, I believe the answer is yes. I think it's about $17,000 a year, but I will let Ian, I think Mr. Sugden, our Director of Development Services and Engineering, is on the line. So, Mr. Sugden?
Through you, Mayor Clark, yeah, just respond that the students purchase a large number of parking permits in lot 6 each year. So there's about 215 permits available in that lot. And the biggest consumer of those permits are the students.
Thank you. Ted, you want to come back in on that? Or Councillor Iman?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Yes, I do have a follow-up. I would assume that the students at the West Orillia campus are paying the university for the purpose of parking there. And if we were to implement this, we would in effect be giving free parking to those students while the university collected the fee. I assume, I'm not sure how it works with the students who are primarily downtown and are parking downtown, whether they have free parking privileges when they go to the Westridge campus or not. I don't know that. I'm not sure. Mason, would you know that answer to that?
I believe Mason's welcome to chime in, but the answer is yes. So if they pay at the university, sorry, if they pay downtown, the university has recently, I believe, forgiven that. But I will ask Councillor Ainsworth to confirm that, or Mr. Sugden. But Mason first.
Yeah, sure. Through you, Mayor Clark. I know historically they've paid at both campuses, whether it be downtown or in Westridge, for parking.
Mr. Sugden, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Clark, that was the situation. I think over the last year, that's being changed by Lakehead University to allow any of their downtown campus students who've paid for a parking permit from the city to be able to use that on the campus when they need to park there.
Councillor Iman, now that you have the answer, did you wish to hop back in?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Only to say that I support receiving this as information. Certainly at this time, whether we want to add that phrase to it so that we're indicating the university we may be flexible in the future. I don't know. It would not be my intention to move that amendment.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to weigh in on this item? I will make a comment then. I was of two minds when I read this. I'm not sure exactly what that arrangement would look like. If they pay at one end, they get it free at the other end. If they bought all at one end and got it free at the other end, that wouldn't be free to one of the parking providing stakeholders. So, but I am willing to visit this again in the future, as Mason has indicated. So any further discussion on the motion? And I'll ask the motion to be put back on the, oh, sorry, Councillor Heen.
Perhaps we could work out a deal with the university where if they were using the downtown lot, we could split it so the university got half and we got half, and then they could park at both places.
Certainly, it appears as though there's not a consensus to move this forward tonight, or sorry, move that forward tonight, but it sounds like that's something we could entertain in the future, and then not a bad suggestion. Thank you, Councillor Heen. Any further discussion? Councillor Iman.
Sorry, I'll get this right. Thank you, Mayor Clark. Through you to the Deputy Clerk, if we pass the motion as it is, it would require a reconsideration if we were to revisit this during the current term. Is that correct?
I'm going to guess that's correct, but I'm going to ask Madam Deputy Clerk to weigh in.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Yes, that's correct. If council were to want to revisit this item within this council term, that it could be a reconsideration process. Again, we evaluate each individual case as it comes forward, but I would recommend that that at this time be added to the motion just to remove any doubt.
I'm certainly from the chair, that sounds like good wording based on what I've heard from the comments tonight. I am touching my glasses, but I'm not touching my face, just for the record. Anyway, Councillor Iman, does that answer your question?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Yes, it does. And if there are options other than the one that is in this report that could be negotiated with the university, then I would be willing to move an addendum that adds an amendment that adds the word "at this time" to the motion.
So Councillor Iman suggesting an amendment to the main motion, simply adding the word "at this time," so that in the future, if we wish to visit this again, it wouldn't be classified as a reconsideration vote. Is there a seconder for that amendment? We got lots of seconders. We got 8 seconders. Anyway, we'll go Mason. He was a student there. We'll go with Councillor Ainsworth. And now I'll ask Ms. Cadeau to put the motion back on the screen. Actually, it's okay. I've got it right here. No, yes, I do. So this is a proposed amendment to the main resolution that moved by Councillor Eamon, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth, that the motion now before council be amended by adding the following at the end of the paragraph at this time. And I will now ask Ms. Crowe to remove that. Any further discussion on the amendment? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Back to the main motion. Would anybody like it reread? Okay, Ms. Godot, if you put it on the screen, please. This committee recommends, moved by?
Moved by Councillor Ainsworth and
Moved by Councillor Ainsworth, seconded by Councillor Cipolla as amended. And I'll read it as amended, that this committee recommends to council that report DSE 2005 dated March 10th, 2020 from the Development Services and Engineering Department regarding a request from Lakehead University for free student parking in the municipal parking lot 6 be received as information at this time. Any further, remove it please. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, I have a very serious question. I want to know who's wearing their pajamas below their desk or table. That's enough proof. Thank you, Councillor Lauer. Okay, departmental reports. This is with respect to the Orchard Point traffic study, and I understand that one member of council, Councillor Campbell, when we get there, is wants to maybe entertain or bring forward an amendment to the proposed resolution. But we'll ask for the main motion to be put on the screen. Somebody introducing this? Thank you. Mr. Sugden, if you want to stand by, I'm going to read the motion, and I'll ask you to introduce it more fulsomely, please. Is there a mover and a seconder to put this on the floor? Moved by Councillor Klusler, second by Councillor Campbell. That this committee recommends to council that as recommended in report DSE 2013, dated March 31st, 2020 from the Development Services and Engineering Department, that the Orchard Point Road traffic study dated, thank you, Ms. Williams, February 4th, 2020 be received. And that the city's 10-year capital forecast be updated to reflect the findings of the Orchard Point Road traffic study, and that staff be directed to provide a copy of this report to the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, also known as the MTO, and pursue discussions with the MTO with respect to the installation of traffic signals at the intersection of Orchard Point Road and Atherley Road. Mr. Sugden, before I ask for any discussion or proposed amendments, would you be so kind as to speak to this?
Certainly, through you, Mayor Clark. So as council will recall, we've had a number of concerns over the years with respect to traffic flow, particularly coming out of Orchard Point Road and turning left in towards the city of Orillia. And that's the driver frustration in that area is related to what is perceived as lengthy wait times, waiting for a safe gap in traffic on Highway 12 or Atherley Road. So as a result of those concerns and the city's prior efforts to negotiate with the MTO to put in a set of signals at that intersection, the city retained the services of Tatham Engineering to carry out the Orchard Point Road traffic study and conduct a detailed analysis of traffic volumes and patterns in the area in order to identify opportunities to improve safety at that intersection. Physical traffic counts were conducted to understand the average demand and peak traffic on both Highway 12 and Orchard Point Road. These values were then extrapolated based on projected traffic growth in the area, including the full build out of Orchard Point. So when I say full build out, we took a look at all of the known development proposals in the area, and those traffic projections from those development potentials were added into this study and evaluated. So as part of the evaluation, the consultants rely on Book 12 of the Ontario Traffic Manual, which is used to provide information and guidance for transportation practitioners and to promote uniformity of treatment in the design, application, and operation of traffic control devices and systems across Ontario. The Ministry of Transportation, or MTO, they rely on this manual solely to determine whether traffic signals will be safe and effective at intersections within their control. Section 4 of the Ontario Traffic Manual in Book 12 identifies specific warrant justifications that need to be met when considering signalization at any unsignalized intersection. Book 12 also provides a standard to analyze the operation of a particular intersection, signalized or not, and assess and assigns a wait time to categorize the level of service, or LOS, as you'll see in the report, that the intersection provides. Longer wait times equate to a lower level of service. Just for everyone's understanding, level of services are rated between A and F, with A being the best, meaning very little to delays, and to F to being a failure of the intersection's function, meaning the wait times are completely unacceptable. The Orchard Point traffic study found that based solely on justifications in Section 4 of the OTM, traffic signals would not be justified at the intersection of Orchard Point Road and Atherley Road for the foreseeable future. The study team further analyzed the operation of the intersection with respect to the level of service and determined that in 2024, the level of service based on delay would be a level of service E, while in 2029, the level of service based on delay would deteriorate to level of service F. And again, that level of service rating is related to Orchard Point Road only. It's the level of service remains higher on Atherley Road. Given that level of service based on the delay at Orchard Point Road, it's expected to fall to an unacceptable level by 2029, and traffic signals are recommended to be installed by 2026. So staff are recommending in this report that the Orchard Point traffic study be received, and that we use the findings of the study to update the city's 10-year capital forecast so that we can allow for the future budgeting to install signals. And also that staff be directed to provide a copy of this report to the Ministry of Transportation and pursue discussions with the Ministry of Transportation with respect to the installation of traffic signals at the intersection of Orchard Point Road and Atherley Road.
I'm trying to read your body language, Mr. Sugden, but of course, not being on the screen, I don't have that ability. But I'm presuming that was your report.
Yes, sorry, Mayor Clark, I should have indicated that was the end of the summary.
No, that's great. Thank you, and that was very wholesome rather. So with that being said, I will now entertain a discussion. Councillor Klustra.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Clark. Just wondering, maybe to Mr. Sugden as well, will there be an end date for that report? And will the Ministry of Transportation take both reports, or the CC take them report as face value, or will the ministry have to do their own report in the future?
Mr. Sugden?
Through you, Mayor Clark. So the Ministry of Transportation has done their own study, I believe in 2016. And then through discussions with them, it was actually the ministry that recommended that the city do its own study to undertake an analysis of everything that we know that's going on in the area. So they've led us to this path where this would be then the point that they should review this against their own factual data that they've got. And then what we're hoping is that the engineering judgment portion of traffic analysis will be the one that will come out on top and allow us to pursue signalization by 2026.
Great, thank you both. Councillor Heen. Then I have Councillor Campbell and Councillor Cipolla in queue. Councillor Heen.
Thank you. I hear what the report's saying, and I guess I'm only looking at anecdotal accounts, and I know that very often on a hot summer night, we'll go out to the Kawartha Lakes ice cream place out on Atherley Road and to get an ice cream cone. And it seems that we wait and wait and wait to get back out onto Atherley Road. And very often end up by going up to the lights at over the bridge to get back down again. So it seems to me that waiting until 2026 is waiting like a long time to get those lights, just on anecdotal experiences. So if I was a resident of Orchard Point, I think that waiting until 2026, I would be awfully frustrated.
Thank you, Councillor Heen, having attempted to turn left there many, many times, and knowing the sentiment of the patron or the citizens on the point. You're probably right. I'm guessing we have pushed and pushed the MTO, and there's a process to go through. And unfortunately, this appears to be it. And I will actually commend staff for their work on this. Mr. Sear and others in Mr. Sugden's department. Right now, I have Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. My intent here is to introduce an amendment, and I wondered if perhaps Councillor Cipolla would like to speak to the current motion as is before I do that.
So you're free to introduce your amendment at any point, but what I will do is, if it's okay with you, Councillor Campbell, I will entertain other discussion, and then I'll come back to you to make sure that you get a chance to introduce your amendment. So Councillor Campbell is, Councillor Cipolla is the last one I have in queue at the moment.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. One of the reasons reading the report is there is maybe Mr. Sugden can give us the actual price for our public viewers, for our viewers, but they can't read the report, I don't think, online yet. So what is the price to put lights in there? Do we know?
Mr. Sugden, the question, well, I'm sure you probably heard the question as well as I did. So do you have an idea of what the capital cost would be?
Through you, Mayor Clark, I'm just trying to find if we cited it anywhere in here, but I believe it's somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000 for the intersection.
If I may.
If I heard correctly.
Okay.
If I heard correct, the number is somewhere between $150,000 to $200,000. Simon, can you confirm? Mr. Sugden, could you confirm the prices? I believe you said 150 to 200,000. Could you please confirm?
Yes, through you, Mayor Clark. Sorry, there was a loud echo there. That's the estimated price, somewhere between 150 and 200,000 in today's dollars.
That's great. Thank you. I will also say that when either I speak, Councillor Cipolla has to have his microphone down, or when he speaks, I have to have mine down. So we'll do our best to bear that in mind. Okay. Thank you for that. I'll follow up, Councillor Cipolla.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I remember when I was on council the previous, not the last time, the time before, there was this conversation happened, and the developer was willing to pay either all of it or half of it or 3/4. Have we approached any of the developers? And that would be an amendment that I would make, that the city staff be given authority to approach the developers that are trying to build a corner there and the new housing project there, so that, and I agree with Councillor Hean that 5 years from now or 6 years from now, and that's if MTO agrees with us. If they don't, then we can't do it. It's my understanding. So I'm just wondering if we ask the developer to pay all of it or half of it and give staff the ability to negotiate with them, these lights can go in within the next year or 2 years or whatever it is if we have the money, so that we're going to run into some financial difficulties in the future because of this, what's happening this year. So I'm just wondering if it's appropriate for us to do that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for the question, Councillor Cipolla. I believe we have visited this particular question because others around the table, our virtual table, feel similarly. My understanding is it still has to meet some of the warrants the MTO stipulates, and therefore we won't get approval until such time. And I think that's what staff have done by virtue of doing authorizing this traffic study, and the resulting report is they have proved that at some point in the future that the MTO warrants will not be met by the existing infrastructure. But Mr. Sugden, would you please verify that, that I'm on the right track or that I'm completely off base, please?
Through you, Mayor Clark. Yes, just to clarify, so there's a number of points to the answer. The city of Orillia, a couple of councils ago, I believe, actually offered to pay for the installation of the traffic signals 100%, and so that they could be put in at that time. And MTO thanked us for our offer, but kindly refused because the warrants were not met. So the same conditions based on the study that we have today, the same conditions apply, that the warrants are not met currently and aren't projected to be met until we hit 2026. So having a developer pay is actually what's going on right now. We are collecting through our development charges. In our background study, there is allocation in there for cost of signalization. So each developer is paying through development charges a contribution that goes put in into our development charge reserve, which would be used to pay for these lights in the future.
Great. So I will ask Councillor, Councillor, you wish to weigh back in? I have a comment I'll make, but I'll let you jump back in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I go back far enough, the developer was willing to pay because of the development at the point there. So I'm not sure why we should, if we have that opportunity, why the taxpayers of Orillia have to foot the bill for it, and that. So I think it's appropriate if we get MTO approval to go and talk to the developers there and see if we can get them up earlier, those lights earlier. And I don't know what Mr. Campbell's amendment is, but if that could be included in it, I would really appreciate it.
Mr. Sugden's answer was really just to illustrate, no matter what the funding source is outside of MTO approval, that project cannot go ahead. But I'm certainly guessing or believing that staff, if we knew we had a developer that was interested in doing that and we met the warrants and got MTO approval, would certainly look to a developer to do that. But Mr. Sugden, can you comment on that, please?
Yes, through you, Mayor Clark, and perhaps I'll lean on Mr. Lang if he's available to chime in on this. But so the development charges background study includes provision for signals at this intersection. So we've been collecting a contribution from each developer's development charges. So in effect, the taxpayer is not paying for the cost of the lights. The developers that are contributing to growth in the city are the ones paying for it. Mr. Lang may be able to add to that. And it's not a question about funding or financing at this point. It's a question of meeting the MTO warrants. And it's as we need to put an intersection on their highway, they take priority in this case.
Mr. Lang, is there anything further you wish to add?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Clark. Mr. Sugden is correct. I do not have the development charge study in front of me, but he would be familiar with his area. So if in fact it is in the development charge study, then essentially it is a developer paying for it, and the only holdup is the MTO approval.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. I neglected to introduce you as the city's treasurer, so I believe I just did so. One thing, I have Councillor Eamon in queue. I'm going to make a comment or a question to Mr. Sugden or Mr. Lang for that matter. If there's other development proposed for Orchard Point, they've had a fair bit of it in the last little while, and some of it continues, well, it was continuing up until recently. And each time there is such a development, there is an obligation by the developer to do a traffic study. Could you confirm that? And then if that is the case, and there is more development before 2026, I presume another traffic study would be done by the developer, and that could be a game changer in moving the time frame forward. So that was two questions. Mr. Sugden, if you would start.
Yes, through you, Mayor Clark. So now that the city has completed this traffic study, and as I noted at the beginning, it's based on known development plans that we have and also an anticipation of development opportunity in the area. But as individual developments come up, they will be asked to either do a traffic brief, which is like an amendment to this report, or their own traffic study to verify what impact their potential development may have. It's where they're working on a site where we made some assumptions on what the traffic potential is or the development potential of that site is. That's the best we can do at this point, is an assumption unless we have a submitted application. So their traffic studies would refine the background data. And if it was a significant enough size of development, it could advance the cause by further decreasing the level of service without signalization.
Mayor Clark, you're on mute. Mayor
And you are
Clark,
not. Councilor Iman, thank you.
if you were recognizing me, I didn't quite get it in your lips as you were reading. So thank you, Mayor Clark, for that. Through to General Manager Sugden, being clairvoyant, he in fact answered the question I was going to ask about development charges. But I do have a second one, and that was that, as I recall, the last time we visited the development that was in question, or it raised the question that there had been a conflict in the our report versus their report, and my question is, has that been resolved?
Mr. Sugden, thank you, Councilor Iman.
Through you, Mayor Clark. Yes, so there was a difference in methodology approach between that developer's traffic impact assessment consultant and ours. The two consultants have got together and compared their methodology, and the developer's consultant in that case is revising the report to reflect the methodology used by our consultant. And that matter will be brought forward for council to make a decision on those applications in the near future, following tonight's decision on council meeting calendars.
Councilor Iman, you're good?
Thank you, Mayor Clark, and thank you, Mr. Sugden. I appreciate that answer.
Thank you. Councilor Lauer.
Thanks, Steve. Just a question, going back to Pat's comment about the dairy facility, and there's a service center out there. Is there any possibility that we maybe create some other complications out there if we do put lights in there? I realize they've got to go in sometime, but you've got a major development across the road. And I, like Pat, have witnessed that both those retail outlets being very, very busy. So I'm wondering, is there a potential of creating more problems that we might need to have to solve? And just by way of that comment, I'm wondering, does Kawartha and the service station have access to Orchard Point Road?
Thank you for that, Councillor Lauer. So two questions, I believe. One is, Mr. Sugden, on the possibility of unintended consequences or other considerations that we might want to take into consideration before moving ahead with such a project. And do Kawartha Dairies and the service station out there /A&W have access to Orchard Point Road?
Through you, Mayor Clark. So part of the consideration before signalized intersection is installed is there to have to be a design exercise and an environmental assessment done to design it. And they would have to take into account all of those impacts, such as the location of existing business entrances and other matters to make sure the intersection is designed properly to not create more problems and solve more. Unfortunately, I don't have my mapping with me at this point, but I do believe that neither of those two businesses have a direct access or up at Orchard Point Road. And I think there's a tier of residential lots in behind both the dairy and the fuel station.
Yeah, I don't have my map in front of me either, but I do believe there is some access, some sort of lane, whether that's temporary or permanent, I'm not sure. But I'm seeing a little nodding from Councillor Campbell. Councillor Cipolla.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is access from the gas station to Orchard Point Road. The ice cream has an allowance, a road allowance into the gas station, and from the gas station, they can go to Orchard Point Road. And the A&W does the entrance into their drive-through comes in from Orchard Point Road. So it does. The gas station does. The dairy does not. They have an agreement with the gas station that they can. There's a little driveway that goes from the Kawartha Dairies to the gas station, and from there you can go on to Orchard Point Road.
Great, thank you. Well, I think we've had a good discussion. I'm going to go to Councillor Campbell right now.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. So as always, my councillor colleagues have brought up some excellent points. I just want to address a few of them if I can before I introduce that amendment. To Councillor Lauer's point, I think actually lights might help the situation there, because you notice people, as Councillor Cipolla just indicated, you notice people leaving Kawartha Dairy and the gas station and trying to kind of scooch over through the gas station to Orchard Point Road, and then trying to turn left out of Orchard Point, which is the very issue that we're talking about here, the main issue. So I think it might actually help that, because if traffic were to stop, there may be an opportunity for people to get out. As for the costs involved, which is always a very important issue that Councillor Cipolla brought up, as Mr. Sugden indicated, the costs are covered by development charges in the area. So that's covered. So I think we're good there. So the study that we have is, of course, based on the current submitted applications. And as Mayor Clark indicated, no doubt there could be further ones in that area, and that is just going to make the problem worse. So my amendment basically is, and if we could have that amendment brought up perhaps, really all it's about is making the wording a little bit stronger so that the ministry sees that not only as a council are we recommending this, but we're strongly recommending it. The traffic counts and their criteria, although it may not warrant it till 2029, I'm certainly, and I know none of my councillor colleagues are willing to wait until someone is seriously injured or killed at that intersection before we do something about it. And that's what I'm suggesting here, is just making the wording a bit stronger. I am aware of traffic signals at other intersections that, even though they didn't specifically meet the criteria, they were still allowed to happen just based on some of the other issues involved. And I'm hoping that this amendment will, again, make it a little more convincing to the MTO. That's what I'm looking for here. So as you can see on your screen, it's just, I suppose it's Mayor Clark's job to read that, not mine.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. So there is an amendment here. I will read it, and I'll ask for a seconder to the amendment, unless I'm breaking some process. But so moved by Councillor. Well, is there? You can read it. It's a short amendment. Is there a seconder, Councillor Iman? Thank you. That the motion now moved by Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor Iman, that the motion now before committee be amended by adding the following after the first paragraph. And that council strongly supports and recommends to the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, MTO, that traffic signals be installed at the intersection of Orchard Point Road and Atherley Road. I would suggest, Councillor Campbell, that if this amendment goes through, and I'm suggesting there is support for it, that we also use that as an indicator of the spirit with which we go forward and negotiate with the MTO, not just the wording of the resolution. Any further discussion on the proposed amendment to the main motion? Can you remove that? Thank you. Okay, I will call the question on the amendment. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Back to the main motion. Would anybody like it reread? Okay, and now it was moved by again. Thank you, I do indeed. Moved by Councillor Klustra, second by Councillor Campbell. Any further discussion on this motion as amended? I will call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, with respect to the ESO, or Environmental Services and Operations Department, Water Master Plan request for proposal. And I'm going to guess we have a general manager out there by the name of Mr. Schell that will introduce the subject. Mr. Schell, are you in the Twitter, sorry, not Twitter sphere, whatever. You're in the World Wide Web, Mr. Sugden? Mr. Schell, my goodness. Andrew, are you there?
Yes, good evening, Mayor Clark. Thank you. I'm never sure on this virtual stuff, but I hope everybody can hear me. Good evening, and through you, Mayor Clark, and to yourself and members of council, I have this report before you tonight, and it is a request for additional funding in the amount of $25,000 to provide award of the Water Master Plan contract. The Water Master Plan update includes provisions to meet class environmental assessment requirements, which will provide the future direction for water system infrastructure and will also allow the elimination of 2 separate EAs within the city's 10-year capital forecast. Conducting these separate studies would be estimated at a cost of $80,000 to $100,000 each. All 4 proposals that were received exceeded the approved budget of $150,000, with Tatham Engineering Limited being the low bid. Staff are therefore recommending awarding the contract to Tatham Engineering Limited and the additional funding to complete the master plan process. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schell. Very much appreciated. I will now ask our clerk's department to put the motion on the screen. Thank you. I'll give you a moment to review it, although I'm sure you've read it in your report and quite familiar with it. And now I'll ask clerk's department to take that away for a moment. Is there a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor? Moved by Councillor Ainsworth, seconded by Councillor Heen. And now I will read it. Thank you. I'll lean back further. Moved by Councillor Ainsworth, second by Councillor Heen, that this committee recommends to council that is recommended in the report ESO 2005, dated March 16th, 2020, from the Environmental Services and Operations Department, Tatham Engineering Limited be awarded contract ESO ENG 2005 to provide consulting services to the Water Master Plan update for the tendered sum of $158,765 plus HST, and that the overall budget allocation for consulting services for the Water Master Plan update be increased from $150,000 to $175,000 net of HST, with the additional funding in the amount of $3,800 being allocated from the Water and Wastewater Reserve and $21,200 allocated from the Development Charges Reserve, and that Mayor and Clerk be authorized to execute that agreement. Any further discussion on that motion? I will call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, we're on to departmental, right? Departmental item number 4, because we withdrew, for those watching at home following an agenda, we withdrew the Aqua Theater upgrade or construction or renovation project because it was deemed to be non-essential based on the criteria set down by the province in the last few days. So we're on to item number 4 with respect to the council meeting schedule, and Councillor Spola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it possible to discuss the Aqua Theater just a little bit? Ask a question?
Just one moment. The opportunity, as I understand it, would have been at the beginning when we discussed pulling the item, but since it's been pulled, it's no longer an item of this agenda and therefore not germane to the meeting. However, I do believe if we wish to bring it back for discussion at a subsequent future meeting of a council committee, we probably can do that. And if you request it, we just do that. Okay, so now on to the council meeting schedule. There's a proposed motion. Would you please put on the screen, and I'll ask our CAO to introduce that. We can do it either. Do you want to introduce it, or do you want me to move it a second? Ms. Williams, would you mind introducing this particular item?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. The report before you proposes changes to the 2020 council meeting schedule in light of the city's efforts to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. From April to July, staff are recommending that council committee and council meetings occur on the same day, with council committee meetings beginning at 4 p.m. A council meeting would occur immediately after in order to ratify the committee recommendations and pass any required bylaws. Further, staff are recommending that you, the mayor, act as chair for all meetings during this time frame. I'm pleased to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Is there somebody willing to put this on the floor for discussion? Councillor Cipolla, seconded by Councillor Klustra. And I will now put on the screen and then read it and then entertain discussion. I think I've got Councillor Heenan.
Yes, we had a schedule of the various councillors.
Sorry, Pat, I'm going to read the motion and I'll entertain discussion. Sorry, that's okay. Moved by Councillor Cipolla, seconded by Councillor Klustra, that this committee recommends to council that is recommended report CD 2004 dated April 1st, 2020 from the Clerk's Department, the 2020 council meeting schedule from April 1st to July be amended to reflect the changes set out in Schedule B of the report, and that regular meetings held from April 1st to July 2020 begin at 4 p.m. The mayor act as chair for all meetings held from April to July 2020, and that the applicable sections of Chapter 12 and 22 of the City of Orillia Municipal Code Committee and Council procedure be waived accordingly, and that if it is deemed desirable, a return to the previously adopted 2020 council meeting schedule be permitted prior to 2020. Before I go to Councillor Heen, one question. Thank you, Madam Ms. Godot, Madam Godot. So somebody who was to chair, now I would assume they would just be put right back in queue to begin doing so when this period of time was over. Can you speak to that, please?
Certainly, Mayor Clark. Right now, we do have a committee chair rotation that we do have a scheduled from now until the end of the term. And so moving forward, what we would look at is shortening that schedule up to ensure that all members moving forward have equal opportunity to chair committee meetings.
Okay, questions, comments, discussion? Pat, did I have you in queue? Oh, Mason, Councillor Ainsworth? Councillor Ainsworth?
Oh, sorry, Mayor Clark. I thought Councillor Heen was going to go first. If not, I will proceed.
Actually, Megan answered my question.
Councillor Heen, sorry, do you wish to be put in queue?
Actually, Megan answered my question.
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. So, Councillor Ainsworth, it is indeed up to you. You have the floor.
Perfect. Through you, Mr. Chair. Usually I would not support such a motion. I think that time for sober second thought is important. You know, having a week in between when we have committee and then when we have council. But, you know, with all due respect, we are in quite different times, as you and other members of council and the community do know. I think it's fine. This is laid out as it is a, you know, a temporary fix, from April to July. I think that's quite all right for this time period. We are going through some big changes, not only with the city, but with the province, with the country. And I think this is completely acceptable under the current circumstances, and we'll be supporting it.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ainsworth. Anybody else wish to weigh in on this proposed resolution? Oh, Jay, sorry, Jay, the floor is yours.
Hi. This kind of goes back to a discussion we had before. I'd be willing, I don't know if anyone's open to this, but I'd be willing to move an amendment forward to move it so the time is 6, just based on similar discussions and debate topics that we had before, just to accommodate shift workers finishing at 5. Certainly most, hopefully as many as possible are at home in self-isolation right now, but there's still those out there that are working. And so if we can make those accommodations, I think it's worth pursuing.
Thank you for that, Councillor Follis. Certainly, the proposal is council committee at 4. Council itself wouldn't start till, it appears, probably would suggest 5:30, 6 o'clock, somewhere in there, which would allow them to catch up on the agenda items as they were moved forward. The only other thing I would add is that I was awkward with the whole scenario to begin with. Quite frankly, I think we all were. But certainly there aren't as many people working right now, which is a sad statement, of course. So hopefully their schedule's a little more flexible. But I have Councillor Lauer, all yours.
Thanks, Steve. I will be supporting this. I have the same concern that Councillor Ainsworth has. However, I am encouragage by the statement in the report that refers to the fact that if indeed we did have an issue that the public may want to weigh in on, we can move to ratify a week later or whenever our next meeting is. So I'm good with that. My question is, though, regarding process, and I really apologize if I missed an explanation on this, but why is this not a reconsideration?
I think there's nothing wrong with that question, and I would ask our deputy clerk to weigh in on that.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Certainly, staff deemed it prudent to bring forward an amendment it's a temporary amendment, the option to revert back as well. So typically staff don't bring forward a reconsideration, but we bring forward maybe an alternative temporary change in direction in light of certain events.
Councillor Lauer, you're good?
Yeah, it's all dependent on the permanency, right? I mean, this is considered as temporary, so it's understandable. I got it.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else wish to weigh in? Anybody wish to have it reread? I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, members of council, do you have any inquiry motions? Seeing none, I will entertain announcements. Councillor Iman, then Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I would like to ensure that our citizens are aware of the long and hard effort that you, our CAO, our fire chief, and our director of communications and business development are providing in leading this city through this very difficult time as members of the Emergency Management Committee. It is a challenge to all of us and a challenge to all communities across the country. And I feel we are blessed with exceptionally good leadership at this time. And I also want to thank you very much for keeping us at the council table fully informed on a daily basis as to what is happening. And so we are following along and are there to support whatever efforts are necessary to enable our community to cope with the problem and be ready to return to our more normal roles once the emergency has been lifted. So thank you very much.
And Councillor Iman, thank you very, very much for that sentiment, and my council colleagues for their support. It's a very strange situation we're in, to say the very least. I'll maybe speak to it a little further after Councillor Campbell makes his announcement.
Thank you, Mayor Clark, and well put, Councillor Eamon, indeed. And if I can just hop in here with something not nearly as serious, and I hope everyone will indulge me. I know this is maybe a little out of the ordinary for announcements, but today is my brother-in-law, Evan, and his twin brother, Eric's 65th birthday. And they are celebrating that separately, given the time, but they were able to virtually spend some time together today. And I just wanted to pass along a sincere happy birthday to both of them. They have lived in the community their entire lives and have done a lot of really great things here. So thank you for that.
Councillor Campbell, one thing I will say, this is living and breathing this particular issue all day long, everybody, and certainly some of us. It's important to remember that there are some lighter moments. We need those lighter moments. We need to take care of our, not just our body, but our mind. And so celebrating those positive events, even in this situation, is absolutely important. So I believe that was just as worthy. Councillor Sepola and Councillor Lauer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to reach out and thank our oh, here we go. Sorry. Can you still hear me? Okay. I just want to reach out and thank our health workers, and all the people that have been working on this dreadful disease to be able to bring it to a stop. The workers are true heroes, and I think we should honor them someday in the future. Hopefully we can honor them in some way, shape, or form. My second inquiry, Mr. Mayor, is we've lost quite a few decent community members in this community, and I was wondering if at some time, if the flags can fly can be lowered to half staff.
Consideration. Thank you, Councillor Sepola. I did see, I thought I had somebody else. Councillor Lauer, I believe you wanted to be recognized. And
sorry.
And then I have JNQ after that.
Sorry, Mayor Clark, I was actually following up on Dave's announcement. I was just curious if this was the same Evan Devine that builds the cardboard boats that sink this council within 30 seconds of the start of every race.
That's the guy. And I'm sure there's a certain segment of the population that thank him for that very thing.
Councillor Kluska.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Clark. I just want to make an announcement for all of our hardworking healthcare workers and home care workers going out every day, basically going out into the unknown, and everybody's out there working hard. And it seems like the testing at Soldiers Memorial Hospital has slowed down a little bit with the drive-through area. And just a reminder to everybody, don't waste PPE if you don't have to, and everybody stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. I will just play on to some of those comments, and certainly the topic that Councillor Iman brought forward. I'm truly running out of ways to describe the situation we're in. As I've said before at this very table, it's not just Orillia, it's not just the province or the country. It's completely around the globe. It's an unbelievable situation, and has led to situations and corresponding measures that generally aren't contemplated. I do want to take a moment to say thank you to the community. Quite frankly, they've been very supportive. There are some concerns that we got expressed, and some ideas. But the support that has come forward has been very heartening, and it's that kind of community spirit that Orillia is known for, and it'll be that kind of community spirit that gets a high level of compliance. And we had somebody sitting in the park today for the better part of 2 hours, and for that whole 2-hour period, there was not one incidents of non-compliance. And even at one point, 3 teenagers came down, and one guy sat right beside the other guy, and one other guy got up and moved away about 8 feet. And I know the observer got out and just thanked them for having that level of compliance, because that's how we make this thing as positive as possible, because it's not a positive subject. I do also want to thank our staff. I will tell you that they are doing things that they have not done before, recognizing, like many other businesses, have had to cut back or lay people off. And I can tell you that is a very unpleasant issue, although it got a wee bit better today by the CERB being open, the ability to apply for the $2,000 a month for 4 months. That will be sorely needed. I can tell you, it's amazing to me, and I'm sure there will be some glitches and some things that will have to be re-looked at. But the province, I think, has done a terrific job in leadership on proactive measures, and I believe the federal government has as well. The fact that they are able to roll out approximately $71 billion in a matter of what from now, about 5 to 10 days, apparently, and hopefully, is an incredible feat. And but these are some of the measures that are being put in place in this extraordinary time. But still, people were laid off, and they were laid off at the city in the past week. And I know Ms. Bolton and her team and our CAO took the lead on that. And I can tell you, I'm in on a lot of those conversations. And we have a leadership team that wore their hearts on their sleeve during that process. Our economic development team have proactively, under the leadership of their director, went out and began gathering data and information from key stakeholders in the community. And now they're with Councillor Iman and Ted Markle and Ron Shulman, with Laura Thompson and Dan Landry, and with our other stakeholders, are working on a template that we can use to bring this community through an economic recovery process that hopefully is more as robust as it can be when we come out on the other side of this. Our legislative services manager, Sean Crawford, and his team, they're doing things they have never done before. Yeah, we're not enforcing parking. We made that decision a while ago as a council, I believe. But now they are out in the community, making sure businesses and individuals are complying to the measures put in place for COVID-19. I will also say, our economic development team, also at the direction of the request of the emergency committee, blitzed the city with signs at many of the high volume businesses and some magnetic signs on major arterial roads as part of our educational program, and I thank them for that. Mr. Shell, who spoke a few minutes ago, we've had to shut down a number of projects in the city where we were able to discern which ones were kept in queue. He and Mr. Sugden over the last number of days and right through the weekend worked on those what we deem to be essential and non-essential projects, construction or environmental related and operationally related, and we vetted that list, the resulting list, through our MPP, and it was approved. So many things will be shut down, some things will be going forward. But that extra work on top of what the other things they're doing, I just want to recognize them for them. And I know Mr. Shell has his team out there still doing what we is essential in the community, and that's largely cleanup, and I've seen much of that going on. Our treasurer, who also spoke a little bit earlier tonight, has been tasked, he and his team have been tasked with dealing with a number of things. And one was putting the report together in a little over 24 hours that council debated and approved about two plus weeks ago on some of the measures that council put into the community to ease the stress on some of our citizens and our vulnerable sector service providers. And I know our Treasury Department also has been fielding many questions on different subjects, and we're dealing with those on a daily basis. And certainly Mr. Merkley and our Parks and Rec team, as we brought in measures and restrictions to limit some of the ability to transmit the virus, they were tasked with going out in the community and putting these and implementing these things, and actually taking actions when people were non-compliant and trying to get around the system. So all that just to say thank you to our senior leadership team and their staff. I have heard people jump up and are volunteering in the community beyond the work that we're asking them to do as well. I will also say that the committee has put together a couple of task forces to this point. I'm sure there will be more. And I've had a few members of council involved already, and we'll look to other members of council as this thing evolves. If you've got time, we'll be looking for you to take on some tasks. But also council has been great. Almost everybody has been in contact with me pretty well on a daily basis with concerns, with ideas, and certainly we're passing all the information on that we can to them. And certainly they're involved in the regular business as we were this evening. And lastly, I really want to say a thank you, and I think Councillor Sapola mentioned it a few minutes ago. One of the most compelling things I've done in a while, and this is somebody who just came back from a Holocaust tour last year, the drive-by at Soldiers Memorial with our first responders the other day was as I say, absolutely compelling and heartening. So as an extension, I want to say thank you to our healthcare system workers, our doctors, our nurses, our technicians, our custodial staff at the hospital, and others, and other frontline workers in the community. There are many working with the vulnerable sector. There are many working in stores and businesses providing essential services and items. So when you go out into the community, as tough a situation as this is, and you see somebody in one of those roles, just say thank you. Anyway, thank you for my allowing the diatribe. If there's anybody else that has a further announcement, Councillor Fallis, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I just wanted to say that my thoughts, and I'm sure everyone at council's thoughts, are with those at Spencer House tonight, the 9 individuals and families who are currently dealing with this disease, the medical professionals and healthcare workers that are on the front lines battling this, as well as all Orillians and one of us who is scared of what the future might hold. This is a very lonesome, horrific, and scary disease. However, no matter who you are, where you are, we're all in this together. You may be alone in a room somewhere, but just know the entire world outside that door is rooting for you and has your back. I was kind of inspired watching. It's a clip put on by John Krasinski, who's stars in The Office, and he does this thing called Some Good News, and I've noticed some other councillors doing that as well, as the mayor just sharing a good news story. And to tell you the truth, just to make people, you know, I think it's one of the tricks to battling this. And one of the good news stories I thought I'd share, and I'm amazed I'm the first one to announce it, is it sounds as if we've got a moose on the loose in Orillia. I personally think we should have some type of name competition to name him. My submission is Mariposa Moose, or the Moose of Mariposa. Mason the Moose might be another good one. But we can come up with some different ones, but just some positive news that you know, nature seems to be all around us right now, and make sure you give your distance, and you can take a picture from the window for sure. But just some positive news there, and again, our thoughts are with everyone tonight, and it's the storm right now, but you know, if we keep at it and really do what we're doing right now, I think the horizon is around the corner. So just a message to all: keep at it and keep up the good fight. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Follis. My recommendation of a name for the moose would be Charles Pachter. I was remiss a little while ago not mentioning. So the good news story is we do have a vehicle in place, and I didn't mention it earlier, and I would get in trouble from our Director of Economic Development and Marketing if I did mention it. Hashtag Orillia is where you can share those stories. It's exploded with some wonderful stories in the last week or so. Whatever social media platform you are using, tag the city of Orillia and use the hashtag Orillia. Orillia Cares. Hashtag Orillia Cares. You know, it's funny. One thing I'm hoping to concentrate on in the next couple of days is, yes, this is a difficult time. I know we haven't seen my mother-in-law in the better part of a month, and that's what we have to do. And the only person she sees is somebody who takes her temperature twice a day. You know, families are in together, couples, individuals. We're going to be looking for ways that people can not just entertain themselves, but keep themselves meaningfully occupied. You know, kick off some of those hobbies you had when you were younger that you put away and you regret putting away. Blow the dust off your old saxophone there, Ted. And anyway, so there are. I hear that gardening has exploded. Matter of fact, apparently the stores are having a tough time keeping seeds in stock because people are turning their backyards into gardens. Anyway, all that to say that we are all in this together, as we are known to say, and we will get through this. But the actions that the citizens take, our citizens take in the city of Orillia, will get us through to the other side of this. And how they act will be done. If they do all the things we're supposed to do, then we'll come through this as well as we can, both individually and economically. Anyway, thanks to all. We do have an open public forum, and I know the people can send their questions, and they can be read by our clerk's department. They can be submitted to M. Williams, which is our deputy clerk, at Orillia.ca, mwilliams@Orillia.ca. And so going forward, if you wish to do that, then we can read those at council. And we haven't received any to this point, so we'll reserve that for the next time. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Cipolla, seconded by Councillor Heen. All in favor? Stay safe. Stay safe until we start our council meeting immediately following this meeting. Thank you. Yeah. So that meeting has been adjourned, but we will reconvene. It's now it's 7:23. Is 7:40 good enough? 7:40 we will reconvene for our ratification meeting or our council meeting. So we'll stay safe till then, if you can do that. And I will call this regular meeting of council to order as part of our emergency situation schedule. I also want to take a moment to say how, even though I need to learn how to facilitate virtual meetings better, I can also tell you I've spent more time in virtual meetings the last 3 weeks than I have in my whole life. So hopefully I'm getting a little bit better at it. But if I am, it's only because of the work of our IT department. Liz and the team there have been great. They've been on call all the time. Councillor Campbell's given 2 thumbs up because he has similar responsibilities in the neighboring township, even though he lives in Orillia. So he gets the best of both worlds. And but the IT departments have been extremely busy running virtual meetings, setting up people to remotely work from home. The stresses it puts on existing infrastructure, and not to mention the human resources that go into it. So just to thanks to Liz and the whole team in the IT department. And not only are they ever available, they are doing it with an amazing attitude. So as I say, we'll call this meeting to order. We traditionally, as you well know, in our viewing audience, pay homage to our country with our national anthem. That's one of the bugs we're still working out. My sense is, and my belief is, that we'll have it worked out for our next regular meeting of council, please. So please forgive us for that tonight. We are going to take a moment of silence, certainly appropriate, I think, at this particular time. And if you wish to think of your country at that point, maybe that's how you could pay that particular homage tonight. So if you're able to, stand and observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Would somebody please be so kind as to make a motion to approve the agenda in your package tonight? Moved by Councillor Spola, seconded by Councillor Campbell. All in favor? Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest based on the agenda you just approved? Thank you. None? Seeing none, if you should happen to have one come to mind throughout the course of the meeting, please just bring it to my attention and we'll record it at that particular point. No presentations or deputations tonight. We do have some minutes. We got March 2nd minutes from 2020 special council meeting regarding Director of Business Development, Communications and Strategic Initiatives recruitment. March 2nd, 2020 regular council meeting. March 18th, 2020 special council meeting procedure bylaws amendments. March 18th, 2020 special council meeting coronavirus or COVID-19 update. March 20th, 2020 special council meeting regarding community assistance. March 26th, 2020 special council meeting emergency management committee question and answer session. And I will look for a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes or note some errors or omissions. Moved by Councillor Heen, seconded by Councillor Campbell. Any further discussion of the minutes? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. No correspondence items. We do have a report, 2020-4. That was discussed at the previous council committee meeting before this meeting. And if somebody would be so kind as to put the resolution on the screen. There it is right there, that very report that I just referenced, report number 2020-4 of council committee now before council be adopted. And just so folks at home understand, that will encapsulate much of the discussion that took place in the previous meeting. So that is a ratification motion. I did see a mover, well, I'll get you to take that back now, Ms. Cadeau, if you would. Thank you very much. And a mover, a seconder, Councillor Campbell. I believe I saw your hand up, and a seconder, Councillor Cipolla. Any further discussion on that motion? Thank you. I will now call the question. All in favor? I did read it. It was on the screen, yes. And just like we did in the previous meeting, we have a consent agenda that's going to capture 3 items, and thus there's one being pulled for either discussion or a change of direction. Madam Deputy Clerk, are we aware of any of those?
Mayor Clark, I'm not aware of any items being pulled or spoken to at this time.
And now that I shut it off, it's too late. I'll do that a little more quickly. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Clerk. We've got one item with respect to a letter to the municipalities from the Solicitor General, a joint letter, an appointment from the Downtown Management Board with respect to Tyler Knight being appointed to the DOIB, a great addition to that to the board, and then with respect to our allocation of gas tax funding for this year. So I will entertain a motion on the screen, and I will look for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Campbell. Second, is there a seconder? Councillor Cipolla, thank you. That council adopt the recommendations as set out on the consent agenda for the regular meeting of council held on April 6, 2020. Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. Is there any discussion on any of those 3 items? Could I have the full screen, please? Seeing none, I will now call the question. All in favor? Thank you. We're into bylaws right now. Okay, we got some bylaws that will do a few things, cover off some of the items that we've already passed, and secondly, something to ratify the proceedings of the night. So I will wait for those to hit my desk. So there's a bylaw on a series of bylaws on the screen. Is there a mover and a seconder to put those on the floor for discussion? Moved by Rob, seconded by Councillor Cipolla. Ralph, thank you. That the following bylaws be enacted. A bylaw, thank you, to authorize the execution of a transfer payment agreement between Her Majesty the Queen and the right of the province of Ontario and presented by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and the City of Orillia funding under the Municipal Modernization Program. This bylaw authorizes the execution of a transfer payment agreement to receive funding under the Municipal Modernization Program for electronic content management review and business process optimization project as set out in the CIP or Councillor Information Package memo dated March 6, 2020 from the Human Resource Department. Bylaw 2020-24, a bylaw to authorize the execution between Her Majesty the Queen and the right of the Province of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Transportation and the City of Orillia funding under the dedicated gas tax funds public transportation program that was discussed a little bit earlier. 2020-25, amendment number 118 to traffic and parking regulation bylaw number 2007-55 as amended, 64 to 71 Elgin Street, 75 Queen Street East, and 115 Murphy Road. And bylaw 2020 to 26, a bylaw to amend Chapter 170 of the City of Orillia Municipal Code, Municipal Bylaw Enforcement Officer. Okay, there was something. Okay, anyway, is there for any discussion on any of those bylaws in that resolution? I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. I believe we have one more. So we have a bylaw to confirm the proceedings tonight. That bylaw number 2020-2027, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held this very night or evening, April 6, 2020, be enacted. Is there a mover and a seconder? Moved by Dave, seconded by Mason. Any discussion on that bylaw to confirm? I'll call the question. All in favor? Carrie, thank you. I know we just did this a little while ago, but if there are any more announcements, I'll entertain those now. Okay. Open public forum, Madam Deputy Clerk, did we receive any submissions since last we spoke?
No, Mayor Clark, I've been monitoring my email and I have not received any additional submissions.
Thank you very much. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Cipolla, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. All in favor? Thank you. Be safe till we speak again. Have a great night, gang. Looking forward to seeing you in person.